Hello, everybody. This is Eve Budnick. I'm the artistic director of Opera del West, and I'm so excited that you have come to this show and to this discussion. You may see somebody next to me who is not the director. This is Dan Shore, who has been involved in many of our productions, and he is sitting in for Pascal. She's on the road, but she should be here any minute. So I thought it would be great to have a second person for you to look at, and maybe we can get a discussion going. So Dan, do you want to say hello?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dan Short. Normally, I am just the page turner for Opera del West, but with these strange pandemic times, I don't have any pages to turn, so I'm just delighted to find another way that I can help out this production.
So at this moment, I think I want to start out by thanking all my singers for this show. They were amazing. They not only were singers, but they were set designers, costume designers, camera people, props people. The way that we had to do this show, it was so unusual. And our very first staging rehearsal involved like walking around their house and finding just the right room to do their filming in. Never had to do that at any other staging rehearsals. So got to see people's bedrooms and dining rooms and living rooms. And I think you'll like what you see. And the other thing that was very strange about this production is that we were unable to have our regular rehearsals in person. I did have a couple of coachings with individuals on my front porch when it was warm enough with masks, and I brought a keyboard outside when it was warm enough. I think it's getting too chilly for that now. But that was one of the ways that we met. And then we also met on Zoom, just like this. And then finally, we used something that's kind of new called SoundJack. One of the problems with trying to rehearse on Zoom is that there's this time lag, and you probably will notice it between me and Dan. We have this latency problem. And it's so difficult to play the piano and have somebody sing somewhere in another place because it's always going to be a beat apart. So every piece you do turns into a fugue. Not the ideal way to rehearse, to coach, but we discovered this app called SoundJack, which is a way that you can do things with a very small amount of latency. And we even were able to make it work when I was working with Jen, who is currently living down in Florida, which I was amazed that it could work at all. So we couldn't actually record together. We each had to record in our own house, but somehow we made it work. So yeah, that's some of the things I wanted to mention. I don't know, Dan, do you have anything to interject just in your in your inimitable way?
Well, one of the questions that I'd love to ask you is, I know about all of the problems that arise when you're trying to do a production online. As you said, you've got to drive around, you're holding rehearsals in backyards, you're sending people microphones and cameras in the mail. But I'm wondering if you found that there's anything about doing these video productions, because this is the second one that Opera del West has done. I'm wondering if there's something that you found that's actually better, or at least made you think, oh, this is a real advantage or a benefit to doing this online, as opposed to doing this live in person on stage, which is, of course, what we're all used to, which is, how we all got into this business in the first place.
Yeah, so I mean, if you asked me sort of in the middle of technical things going terribly wrong, I'd say no, there's nothing good about it. But looking at it in, oh, here's Pascal. In hindsight, I mean, one of the amazing things about being able to do this in a computer screen is that we get to send it out to anybody, anywhere. So it's amazing. We have new audience members that have never been able to make it to one of our productions in the Boston area because they live in California or anywhere. I mean, it's really nice to be able to include people that might not be able to get to our productions any other way. So I would say that was a big pro. Pascal, do you have any thoughts on things that are better on Zoom?
Well, Eve, you hit the nail on the head for me. It's accessibility is the thing for me. You know, I grew up in Miami, Florida, and even though there is an art scene there, there's not a lot of live art that you can experience the way that we can here in Boston or New York or other big metropolitan areas. And I think this opportunity gives us so much more to give people who may have never experienced theater, may have wanted to, but just never had that access. And I think that's so important. And what's really exciting about it, I know some people who are from home in Miami who are going to watch tonight, which would never normally happen in my normal like artistic life, which is so great. So I think that's the biggest thing for me. And I think that's also something I hope everyone in the arts can see as an opportunity for us to grow in our industry, that accessibility is such a great tool for us, being able to reach not just our normal demographic, but everybody who could and want and should be able to experience any kind of live performance.
Yeah. And I mean, we are doing this as a free show. We hope that people will make a donation, but that does mean that people can try it out that might say, I'm not sure if I like opera. I'm not sure if it's the kind of thing that I'd want to go to and spend 2 hours, but hey, you know, for free on my computer, it's worth a try. So since we
that
now
kind of
have...
brings me to another question. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
That's okay.
One of the things I think when people think of opera, they think of these huge, long productions with huge casts and a big orchestra and an enormous theater. And one of the nice things about La Divina is it's a very small show. And I'm wondering, because you have done so many small productions like this at Opera del West, if you can talk a little bit about how different that is working on a chamber opera as opposed to, a full-scale opera, which you've also done at Opera del West.
Yeah, well, I'll start out by saying that we're so lucky to be able to do a piece by Thomas Pasatieri. He's one of our favorite living composers, and we've actually done, this is our third performance of one of his shows. And the first one we did was actually a full-length production on a real stage based on Chekhov's The Seagull. It was incredible to sort of dive into something that had so much incredible music, and there was humor, there was tragedy, it was all in there, and it gives you a chance to really sort of live with the characters for a nice chunk of time. But when it comes to doing something short like this, there's a lot of element of surprise. There's, you don't know the characters as well, so everything they do becomes this really like exciting sudden thing that you have to sort of go with the flow. It also, certainly for a production on Zoom, it made things a little bit easier to be able to do a shorter piece. And we did Zumpresario before this, which is based on Mozart's Impresario, and that's a piece that has individual scenes and dialogue and arias that stop and start. It turns out that's much easier to put together technically than something like this, which is through composed. There's no stopping. It just keeps going. So visually and audially, it just keeps going. So it was much trickier to put together, but it was exciting to be able to try something like that. Pascal, if you want to unmute, do you have any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I think what's so great about doing a show that is shorter is I think so often in the conventional way that we experience either theater or opera, we seem to believe that there's only one way to do it, right? It's big spectacle, lots of money. And what I love about seeing shorter versions or just, maybe a piece that is just composed differently, or the device that we experience is different, like this virtual world, I think it gives us an opportunity to think a little bit more about how we can make art and what are the other pieces and things we can do. And I think it also, like, we're in a time now where I feel as though a lot of how we create art is going to change and how we experience it. And I think this idea of short form is another avenue that we just don't experience enough, and might as well, so when I think of TV shows or film, I think we're getting into a place where we can understand that a great piece of art doesn't have to be a specific kind of way. There shouldn't be a prescription of it. And that's what excites me. Now, I can't wait till I get to do a full length, big old opera. That's going to be fun. But it's always great to be able to do different things and to explore what those avenues are in creating the art.
I was just going to say, this is Pascal's first opera. Is there anything that you noticed that was very different in terms of directing opera versus, let's say, musical theater?
I think the biggest thing that normally is different for me when I think of opera is the vast different languages it could be in, and that can be a different kind of hurdle to experience. But this is an English opera, so that was an easy transition for me. But I think it wasn't too different. I love musical theater, and it's one of the things that got me into theater in the first place. And it was just another opportunity to play in that world more that I don't get to play a lot in. I think the difference I think about is I think the movement isn't as big for me as I would think with musical theater. So really being able to be as intentional with what each character is portraying, not only as they move through space, but as they're reacting with their scene partner or to the audience. So I think those are the different things, like the different ways in which they embody movement can be a little different opera. But again, I wonder how it would have been different if we were in the room together versus this way. So it didn't feel too different, but it made me excited to do more, because I love being able to work with music and work with artists who are just brilliant at what they do. So I just want to keep doing that forever.
It's interesting that you mentioned that about movement, because usually one of the things that we think about in opera staging is that, you're on stage at the Met and people are like 12 miles, behind, and people have to do these enormous, elaborate gestures, some of which are almost comical stock physical gestures that opera singers have been using for hundreds of years, and these big things, and turn and look this way. And I'm wondering, I think one of the nice things maybe about doing this on a video is that you don't have to worry about that problem at all, because everyone is kind of in this intense close-up on the screen. And I'm wondering how it was for you to work with singers who are used to making larger gestures on stage. Did you have to tamp them down at all?
Such a great question, Dan. I think, there's now, I've even told this to my students, Zoom acting is now a technique, right? It wasn't a technique before this pandemic, and now that's a whole new genre and way of the way we perform. And I think, what I like to do with my actors, and whenever I give them an opportunity, is to let them go as far as they need to go. And then we reel it in to make it feel as comfortable for them, so that when they move through that piece, they can get there to a point and it doesn't feel like it's too much for them to reach it. And so I think, what I try to do in the room is give actors the opportunity to go that far. And if we feel like it's working, then we keep it. But I think I love to play in the room and give actors and even designers or whoever is collaborating the piece an opportunity to explore, because sometimes we have to make a mistake and then figure out, okay, that didn't work, so let's go back and find another way to interact with it. And I think that's a lot of what we had to figure out in this way of articulating certain gestures, certain moments, and really giving each character and actor an opportunity to have certain specific things that they were doing to really distinguish who that character is. So we know, Eve made a good point. It's a shorter piece, so we don't really get to know these characters as well as if it's a 2-hour play, a 2-hour opera, or 2.5 hours. We only get them for like 30 minutes. So really giving them an opportunity to fully embody and figure out what the movements are for this character that feels authentic is imperative to them really understanding what they need to do in each scene. So I think that's how I try to make it work. And we try our hardest to see what feels best. And that's what's really important to me, whatever feels best for the actor in that moment.
Yeah, I'm going to add on to that and say that we also had the issue of working with microphones and working with little cameras on computer screens. And, you would try something out and it would turn out if you turned this way, we couldn't hear you, or, the camera didn't quite get you the best way, or your light was bad. So there was the addition of that. The good news is when you're always in a close-up, we really can see all of the emotions, the expressions in a really good way. So I think you're going to see that very much in this production. Everybody has some great expressions going on, and really, that's how they draw you in just half an hour. It's all on their faces.
So it's interesting you talk about some of the things that you learn about working with microphones, and Pascal talked about working with her students. And it kind of reminds me, normally when we work with students or when we work with younger artists, there's this assumption that because we're older and we're more experienced, we know what we're doing. And one of the odd things about these new video opera productions is, of course, we have no idea what we're doing because no one has ever done this before. And I'm wondering if both of you could talk a little bit about what is it like to be in charge of a production, knowing that you're really not sure what's going on at any given time.
Okay, well, I'll start. And I mean, this was our second virtual production, so that did help that we had a little bit of background. We were so lucky to have singers that were willing to try anything. And, if something worked for them musically, but didn't work for us technically, we would change it up. We'd try it a new way. You're taking the ride with them, and oftentimes they'll have a much better idea than you will, because they're living it, and you're sort of 30 miles away going, all right, why don't you try that?
Yeah, I think about this a lot in this moment, because so often we are expected to just know in the room and have those ideas and have a clear vision. And I think what this time has taught me, that it's okay to have something that's malleable and flexible, because it has to adapt to the world. And this happens a lot, even when we were in regular productions. We dream up of what we really want the dream performance to be like, and then we get the budget. We're like, okay, what can we actually do with the money we have, the people we have, the space we have, and then we're able to learn from one another. And I think for me, it just solidified so much more of, we are always learning. Like there's never a point where we're never learning something, no matter how old or how experienced you are in the field that you're in. And I think that's important, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I know I learn from my colleagues and from the people I work with, and that makes me a better artist, because I'm able to be open to that and know that I'm going to make mistakes. And though it may be a little frustrating, complicated, I'm able to learn more from those mistakes and be able to be better and have a better idea of how to attack this problem, or what are some other solutions I can use in order to alleviate this issue. So I try to, not only in my teaching practice, but in my rooms, I always encourage, like, we're going to do a lot of failing, but we're going to keep risking again, because that's how we're able to be better. And I think that just has to be a part of any artist's way of working, because it's a part of our career and our path. I can't think of any artist who hasn't had to continuously learn of everything that they do about their craft or what they want to do, and not be better for it.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say is that a lot of these singers haven't had to do a lot of recording. That really wasn't a big part of what they do as singers. sometimes, but not often. And so we're hoping, even after all of this passes, that this is going to come in handy for them when they're sending things in for auditions or whatever. They're gaining some knowledge that's going to be handy. I will also say that I find that opera singers are so rigorously trained. They have such an amazing program wherever they go to school, and they're ready to dig in. And you're not going to find an opera singer who's very lax about things. They're willing to try things, and they're willing to work hard at it, because opera singing is hard, and you have to work all the time in order to make that kind of a sound and to have that kind of knowledge of this kind of singing. So again, I'm just so pleased with who we had to work for us.
I was going to say, you kind of stack the deck a little bit, because you picked not just singers who were incredible artists and brilliantly talented and well-trained, but you specifically looked for people that you knew were really nice people that would be wonderful to work with. So
Yeah.
It's kind of cheating. It's kind of cheating, but that being said,
when you have to put something together in such a short amount of time, there just isn't time for, I shouldn't say it, but being a diva, which the characters do, but not the singers.
Now, on the other hand, I happen to know personally that there were a couple of issues, there were problems. Things always get tense when you're doing this kind of work, and the schedule is so, coming down the deadline for video editing. I'm wondering if you can share with us some of the worst things that happened, and how you managed to find a way out of them.
I feel like just trying to figure out how to make the sound work, right? Like that's the most challenging thing. Like it's Eve, go ahead. For me, I couldn't even I had difficulties using the software that all the singers were using, but at the same time I was like, well, I just really need to make sure they look great, and that everything, all their intentions are great, and that their faces are making the expressions they need to. I really can't tell them about the kinds of singing, so it's okay for me not to hear it. But that was definitely a challenge. But I think we were able to go in stride with it. Eve, I don't know if there are any other spots that you want to mention.
I mean, I would say it was mostly, and I feel like my technology background is not that strong. So if I'm telling somebody else how to do some technology, it's not a good sign. But certain things we would try one way and think, okay, this is good. And we would bring that recording home and take a look at it. And it was a big mess, because from our end, it sounded fine. But as soon as we started putting all the different recordings together, and there are times when 3 or 4 of them are singing together, and you really need to have that very precise. And at their end it seemed fine, but then the piecing it together was probably one of the hardest things, and just making sure that we had created something that could, the puzzle pieces would fit. And so I would say that, for a couple of scenes, we actually had to have them record a second time in a different way. And that might've been the hardest thing.
Yeah, this is probably a sweeping generalization. And of course, there are plenty of wonderful exceptions of people that we know, but it seems like the kind of person that is excited about putting on a wig and a costume and makeup and dancing around the stage, singing at the top of their lungs, acting the part of another character, is not necessarily the kind of person who is also really, really good at working with technology. It seems like there's a slightly different personality type, who's very good at computers than people who are, really interested in sharing live performance with people.
Well, I definitely think a couple of the singers were more adept than I expected. And at times when we were all having a problem, one of them would say, well, why don't we try this? And it worked. So we were lucky that way,
And I think that speaks to a lot of like this time. I think everyone is trying to get themselves to be as understanding of the technology that's coming out, because as artists, that's our platform now. Like we don't have the opportunity now to go to venues and audition. You know, my favorite thing is seeing how actors are trying to make their own in-home studios to do auditions, or what their like little self-tape, setup is, because these are things that we were never taught or expected to have to do. So now there's this really, I think there's a lot of urgency to learn as quickly as possible how to be tech savvy, which I think is great, but it's also, I think it's overwhelming for artists who just want to, opera singers who just want to sing. That's all they really want to do is sing, and not have to worry about how to work a camera, what angles and all these things that, we really don't think about until now.
So I'm thinking maybe one more question, and then I want to give people a chance to grab a drink and get set up to watch the show. Do you have something else, Dan?
Sure. Well, this is a leading question, of course. I know that Eve will never ask for money, which is, we've talked about this for 15 years. But I'm wondering if she can answer the question, why would someone who is watching this video think, oh, maybe I do want to send a couple of dollars to Opera Del West, or a couple of dollars to my local opera company, or a couple of dollars to my local theater company or dance company? What would you say to encourage people that this is a valuable investment that they're making in their community?
Well, I mean, it's certainly a tough time for the arts in general. And if you have a local group that you love and you have seen some of their productions, or even you see our production for the first time and you really want to encourage more of this, I mean, we're struggling because we have to do things for free. We can't create a staged production where people buy tickets. So anything that you can offer up is a wonderful thing, and it goes to the singers who have put so much time in. Maybe it'll buy us one prop for the next show. Yeah, it's very difficult right now. So anything that people can do would be greatly appreciated, and also I think will make you feel good for supporting something that's really having a tough time right now.
And the arts are imperative. And I think we have to remind ourselves that without the arts, this world will be a very sad place. And if we're not able to put value in it, then we won't have them. And I think, there's so many great, like I feel very lucky to even be a part of this, to be a part of this production as someone who has been an admirer of so much of the work that Opera Del West does. It's something that, we have to be able to preserve the arts in our cities and in our areas, because they are the future. They really are able to do things that other parts of our city or even our government can't do. So it's important that we show that value to them. And, a couple dollars does go a long way.
So at this point, it's almost time for the show. I'm sure you want to grab yourself something to drink, or get yourself settled into your couch, and just go to, on the YouTube page, go to where it says premiere and click on that, and there will be a countdown, and then it will begin at 7:30. Bye.